Hello and welcome to My Newt News. I'm not a Newt. My name is not Newt, but you can call me Newt if you want, because Lord knows I've been called worse. I got a fun story here. It's all about prior proper planning and be careful what you ask for because you might get it. And actually, I've got several versions of this pulled up in the Daily Mail and the walesonline.co.uk. Also on, shockingly enough, on Twitchy, because they've got a nice quote on there. But it's interesting because this article or this situation was actually pretty widely reported on, which I thought was kind of interesting, including Op India. So I've got a couple in the UK, and there's Australia, a lot of different places, even though it occurred in Germany. So I thought it was quite interesting. The gist of the story is, and we'll take the editorializing, are arrested after gluing themselves to the floor. Now, actually, that's kind of cutting to the chase, because really, they went in and glued their hands to the floor. Climate activists who were stating that they were members of a scientist rebellion, which I believe that it is Scientist Rebel. They glued themselves to the floor of the Porsche pavilion at Volkswagen's Autostadt while trying to bring attention to climate crisis. We all know that okay, that's editorializing again. But the thing that I thought was very interesting is, this guy's, his tweets, his take on it. Together with 15 other members of Scientist Rebel 1, I have occupied the Porsche pavilion at Autostadt, 9 of us glued to the floor, and some of us on hunger strike until our demands to decarbonize the German transport sector are met. So they're going to be there until their demands are met. Next tweet. At Volkswagen told us they supported our right to protest, but they refused our request to provide us with a bowl to urinate and defecate in a decent manner while we are glued. Okay, I don't know. Maybe things are different in Germany. Here in the wilds of Oklahoma, in the United States, urinating and defecating in a bowl, yeah, that's not considered in a decent manner. Not at all. While we were glued, and have turned off the heating. I think they turned off the lights too in one of the other ones. Don't drink coffee while you read this thread. The coffee will shoot out your nostrils. So, I'm telling you, I think that they've got a lot of kickback. And, from what I've seen, they didn't get a whole bunch of sympathy. And this guy, he complained that he said that they let the people out who were assisting, but then wouldn't let them back in. So they weren't able to bring them food. And eventually, I guess Volkswagen brought them pizza. But then this guy's complaining because his hand started swelling because it was glued to the floor. So I'm assuming that their thought was, we'll go in there, we'll glue our hands to the floor, they'll call the cops will come out, they'll put the acetone on our hands, pull our hands up off the floor, we'll go to jail for processing, and then we can go out and do on the rounds of interviews saying, we were arrested because we want to, and then give their spiel. And I think it's kind of brilliant that Volkswagen were like, oh, okay, yeah, we support your right to protest. We'll just leave you to it, and we're just going to turn off the lights and the heat on our way out. Thanks. And I guess that they were there for about 24 hours and did not like it. And apparently this guy, his hands started to swell, and he asked that they bring a doctor in, and they said, no. So eventually, I guess he deglued himself or allowed them to deglue him, and he went out to go seek medical assistance, and then as soon as he got outside, he was arrested, and I'm sure he received medical assistance.
I'm Jonathan Grimalda. I'm a researcher in social psychology at the Research Institute in Germany.
After a night sleeping on the floor, and there's another thing, I am sure people in support can get out of the building, but they couldn't get back in. We can't order food, and we must use the one provided by Volkswagen. Well, I'm sorry, but you're talking big about at the beginning of the protest that we're going to be here until our demands are met. okay, you know what? You're not really sacrificing much if you're complaining that you're not getting your food catered and you're not getting exactly the food you wanted and that they turned the lights out on you. I mean, come on, gut it up. You're old enough that you shouldn't be a complete, I hate to use the term, but snowflake. I mean, you've spent enough life, you're old enough to realize, hopefully, that you don't get everything you want and that you should have a little bit more grit. And if you really believe in this, then you should be able to hold out 24 hours sleeping with your hand glued to the floor. Lights out, random unannounced checks by security guards with bright torches. Police just came in. Well, and you know what? If you're an actual scientist, you should, think through all the possibilities of your actions. You should be looking at it and thinking, okay, if I do this, then the response could be this, or this. So if it's this, I need to do this. If it's the second, then I need to do this. If it's the third, I need to do this. I mean, that's what science is. So if you're a scientist, then you should be planning these things out beforehand. And he also said, doctors ascertained the possibility of life-threatening blood clots in my hand and recommended immediate transfer to a hospital. And there they are in the dark. And there's the ones that couldn't get back in, the backup crew. But I'll be honest, if you want to stand up for what you believe in and you're, trying to be like the civil rights protesters in the U.S. in the 50s, they went through some crap. There's the famous picture of the, I think it was in Birmingham, the police with the big police dogs, biting at the protesters. And, some of them were killed. Some of them died. They were shot or dragged out and hung. I don't know that I would be able to go that far if my life were on the line. But, if I'm going out there prepared to be arrested and, in this case, dragged off, picked up and dragged away, there's one of these where there is. I'm sorry, but those people better have gone out there understanding the possibility that they could get run over. Because I got news for you. There are some crazy people out there. And I don't necessarily just mean the protesters. I mean, if some of these guys, I remember there was one that I want to say that the guy picked up and moved a protester because he had to go see his parole officer and he might go to jail if he wasn't able to. The people in these cars, they're being inconvenienced. Just like, say the people who aren't getting their preferred meals and are having to sleep with their hand glued to the floor. But you chose to be inconvenienced. You chose that path. The people on the highway that you're inconveniencing, they didn't choose that. Like I say, there are some people out there with very, very, very poor impulse control. And to just assume that they're not going to run your dumb butt over, I think you're making quite the assumption. I think they're really lucky that people don't come up there and punch them and do violence to them. And I think it's a credit to the overall law-abidingness of our society that doesn't happen very often, if at all. So, you know what? If you want to protest, that's all well and good, but you got to be prepared for the consequences. And if you don't think it's worth the consequences, you shouldn't do it. I guess that's all I've got to say on that, more or less, pretty much. And yeah, they did not get a lot of support. It does not seem like. But let me know what you think in the comments. If you like what I did here today, like and subscribe. I appreciate your time. Thanks. Have a good one. Bye.